You're listening to the Kaiju Apostle podcast, Building a Bridge Edition. All right, everyone, thank you again for tuning in to another episode of the Kaiju Apostle podcast, Building a Bridge Edition. My name is David, and joining me this evening is Jonathan from the sunny state of California. How are you doing tonight?
Doing great, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining. I was thinking about when we first started connecting, and I think I went on this following binge of everyone who was at G Fest last year, and I was not. And I was looking here, and you were posting some stories from the Kaiju Crescendo event, and I was losing it because she did some of Sato's work from Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, and that's my son's probably favorite score of all the films. So so I showed it to him, and he was so excited, and just going through all of these, and it was just awesome to see that that was our first interaction, right?
Absolutely.
So before we get in, I mean, let's just talk about that. I want to hear your thoughts about that event because I know so many people loved it.
Yeah, that was the main reason I actually went to G Fest that year. There was another concert, the Akira Ifukube 100, which was uh, a Kickstarter campaign made by John DeSantis and Chris Olio,
Mm-hmm.
and they're regular G Fest attenders, and they decided to do this great concert, and I was at that one as well. And when this one came up, and I heard that Michiru Shima was going to be conducting her own music, it was the experience I needed to have as a fan. That I really love Tokyo SOS. I love Godzilla X Mechagodzilla. It's
Mm-hmm.
some of my favorite tunes from any of the movies, and I I really got to meet her at the G Fest that she was a guest. I was her handler, and it was really nice getting to know her, and I was really excited to see her again.
Yeah. So,
And oh, sorry.
sorry. Go ahead. Nope. Go ahead.
And that concert was really, really great. Just being able to be with fans and hear the excitement and feel the excitement in the room as everybody could recognize the tunes that are coming up, and it's an experience unlike any other, especially when you know these movies so well and you've watched them so many times. It feels different when you hear it live in a room. It's nothing like it.
Yeah, I can't imagine that energy that you get, right? It's not just the music being played live, but everybody else there just partaking in it. I mean, as a musician, I get it. So that's awesome that that's what got you to go last year, right? Because you said, and if I remember right, you've helped with a few G Fests before. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what does that look like for you?
I worked with um, this talent agency, Celebrity Icons, and basically it's run by Jim Ciranella and Shigeko Kojima, and what they do is they bring Japanese guests over to the United States for conventions,
Mm-hmm.
and basically that is for fans to be able to meet these people, get their autographs, and it's a big, it's really a great opportunity to be able to meet these people from Japan and to get to know them. And well, at G Fest we worked that year with director Masaki Tezuka, who
Mm-hmm.
did Tokyo SOS, and he was our guest along with Noboru Kaneko, the 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 engineer from that movie, and they were our guests, and it was really great bringing them to G Fest and meeting the fans and doing autographs, and it was just a wonderful experience, especially for them. In Japan, they don't get the type of recognition that they get here for the movies.
Hmm.
It's like they're kind of like everyday on the street kind of people.
Yeah,
But over here, they treat them like, wow, I didn't know everybody loved our work so much,
yeah.
and they feel so appreciative. They almost don't want to go home every time. They just they just love seeing the fans appreciate their work, and they're also like fans themselves, so
Mhm.
they love seeing the outpouring that's really at G Fest, and it's different from anywhere else.
Yeah. It's interesting how that works though, because coming from the music world, I've had friends who have toured, they go to Japan even as well, right? And they do so well over there. You know, it's just like it's such a big deal. And then they come back here to the States and they might have like 150 kids show up at a show. Right. But they go over to Japan, it's all sold out day after day after day after day. You know,
Yeah.
it's different, and you get to see people who you realize how big of a deal it is that you show up. Um, so, as if you've listened to the show before, you know that our goal here is to to pick out different people in the community that I feel like, have made a difference, even if it's not in a sense of they're going to get this chapter in a book about the fandom, right? It's people who are positively encouraging and trying to uplift one another. And at least for me personally, you know, like I said, I started messaging you because I saw you're posting the stuff from the concert there. But I found our interactions. I think you were the first person in the fandom that I found out was a Christian, and I was like, not that I didn't think that there weren't others people, right? Like, I
Of
mean, we've
course.
learned that that's not the
That's
case,
yeah.
but I think you and I were probably, you were the first person I had actual conversations with about your faith and how that influences the way that you approach a lot of this. And I've just noticed that the way that you interact with other people, the way you try to promote other people's work, the way that, you know, you're going out of your way to try to serve others. I mean, you know, we've talked about your own personal life as well. I mean, it reflects in that. So that's why, you know, I felt like you would be a good fit here. So,
Oh,
I mean,
thanks.
yeah, absolutely. So outside of Godzilla, like, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, I am as a career, I'm an IT guy. I work at a food company, and basically, um, with that, I also serve a lot at my church. I go to Fellowship Bible Church in Belmont, California, and I work um, as a leader for our college and careers group. And basically, I serve as a planning leader to connect our younger fellowship with our older fellowship in a church
Hmm.
level scope. And we do that through service opportunities and creating opportunities for our church to pray and build community together through running all prayer nights and finding ways we could serve our seniors, our younger kids through babysitting, etc. And it's been the place where I use most of my time. But at the same time, I really love um, sci-fi films. I love
Hmm.
everything about tokusatsu. So I watch Godzilla, Ultraman, Super Sentai, Kamen Rider, Garo, you name it, I watch it basically. Um, and all that's really stemmed from loving Godzilla first. And
Yeah.
and really, on the side, I also do this guest handling thing part
Hmm.
time with celebrity icons, and that's been a great part of serving these people who I've looked up to my whole life. And as you know, I've gone to work with Haru Nakajima and
Hmm.
Ken Satsuma and Tsutomu Kitagawa and a lot of other different people who worked on these movies and bring them over to meet the fans. And part of the handling job is really taking care of them, and it's like looking after their needs, really being selfless and taking the job seriously.
Hmm.
And part of that is like really I get to show my servant's heart and appreciation to them.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it connects the fans with these people who are hard to reach and didn't know other people appreciated their work. And it's really like a great thing about just connecting the fans. And it really means a lot to my heart that um, that both people both sides get something out of this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like people get to meet their heroes. Some of them have their stories of watching Godzilla movies with their dad and their family is growing up, and
Mm-hmm.
they just pour it all out in front of them, and even though they don't speak English, they could really feel the same that sentiment and like how
Yeah.
much their work is loved and appreciated. And at every event, I always feel grateful that I can take part of this. And I think it's really a great opportunity for the fans to take advantage of this whenever they're around to come and meet them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, you're right. It's, I've been to a couple different, here in Kansas City, it's Planet Comic Con. And it's not like the guests there are never excited to do what they're doing, right? But you just kind of feel like, I don't know, it's different. In my head, I've never gone to G Fest, but I'm like the casual person who maybe is passing by Billy D. Williams, right? Obviously, like, yeah, everyone wants to see Billy D. Williams, but it doesn't mean that your life has necessarily been changed because of him the same way that maybe you go up and see someone at G Fest, right? And maybe
Yeah,
maybe that is the case, but it from the impression I've gotten, it seems like it's a little bit more intimate. So seeing you being able to do that, because you've shared that with me before, like, I just think that's awesome. That's something that a lot of people, I don't think they think about the logistics of actually how to get everyone over here to the different cons and festivals, right? It's a big deal.
absolutely.
So here's, the $1 million question. What got you into Godzilla to begin with?
Yes. So growing up, my brother was really into Japanese anime, monster movies, everything out
Mm-hmm.
of Japan. And as a young boy, he would just uh, play them for me. He's 13 years older than I am, so he was kind of my babysitter. Some people thought he was my dad sometimes, but yeah, it's a great sibling thing that we have. But basically, he would plop me down and put on a Godzilla movie, and I would just be so mesmerized and so amazed by what this giant monster that's like sometimes he's a hero, sometimes he's not, sometimes um, it looks like he's just doing whatever he wants all the time. But at the same time, he's like super strong. He doesn't care,
Mm-hmm.
and it's something about the special effects and all that really just pulled me in. The imagination behind the films, like seeing like a three-headed monster,
Mm-hmm.
things fly, the music's great, and I just ran away with it my whole life. So it's really um, it's really been a great journey, and my family has really encouraged my um, loving this loving Godzilla for basically all my life. They would every time it would be on TV, they would record it for me and play it back, and I'd say I just want to watch that movie again and again. Um, I remember my mom would she would cook like live crab, and sometimes we would just have the crab in the like laying in the bathtub, and I didn't have an Ebera toy for the longest time. And I used to pretend like, that live crab in the bathtub was Ebera. And I would bring my Godzilla figure and play with him. And
Oh,
it was
man.
like just pinch and hold on to my Godzilla. And I'd be like, yo, what's going on? But, and, it was a lot of fond memories like that growing up. And um, for me, uh, Godzilla is also like just the outlet in which I know my family cares for me in like another, in
Mm-hmm.
a superficial-ish way, but not because they always know that I love it. So every Christmas I would get something from related to Godzilla every birthday, and I always feel like my family knows me,
Yeah.
and yeah, I owe that a lot to my parents and my aunts, and yeah, they've been really um, just encouraging of that this entire time. Another thing was hmm, just being a fan. I got to know. Well, I ventured into going into the online message boards around the
Mm-hmm.
50th anniversary. So maybe like in the 2000s, early 2000s, when I guess message boards were a big thing.
Yep.
And I was always perusing the message boards and seeing I didn't know there was such a community for all of this.
Hmm.
And I would just kind of post on like Goji Stomp and Tokyo Monsters from time to time, and I was hearing about like some of these events that would happen, like G Fest, and I was like, oh wow, I didn't know anything like that was actually happening. There's a
Yeah.
convention for this stuff, and I didn't go until my later years, but I heard that Haru Nakajima was coming to a local con in Burbank, California, in 2011, and as soon as I got news of that, I had my dad bring me there. I was like, I
Hmm.
have to meet the man in the suit. I need to know what kind of guy he is after all these years of following him.
Hmm.
And so my dad brings me, we get on a plane and the whole thing, and he sees we get first in line just to meet him, and we see this very humble older Japanese guy walk up, and he sits down, and I was like, wow, it's really him. And I'm just staring at him in awe and everything. What a great moment it is for me. I come back around and I just want to shake his hand. And I was just like, thank you so much for your work. And I'm so excited to be here. And he just puts his arm around me, pulls me down, and gives me a big hug. And I was just like, whoa, what is happening? Godzilla's hugging me. And, and he made my time there feel really special. And he did that
Yeah.
with every single fan. And he always did it that way. And, as soon as I met him, I was like, I want to meet all. I want to meet all of them someday
Hmm.
if I ever could. And so that same no, a couple years later, I went to G Fest with uh, Furuya-san, the original Ultraman suit
Hmm.
actor, and I really wanted to meet him. And every time I would meet these Japanese stars, they would be the most humble, the most respectful, and the most appreciative celebrities I've ever met in my life. And that just kept bringing me back.
Yeah.
And I would always be in awe about this community. Like everybody's so supporting, and it has G Fest has a very family feel to it as opposed to other cons.
Hmm.
It's There's a major difference, um, and I believe it's just really a testament of the fans really wanting to include others.
Yeah.
Because I would be there and random people would say hi or like ask me like what's my favorite Godzilla movie. I don't even know these people, and I was just like I'm just here for the monsters, man. But like everybody is very friendly there. It's
Yeah.
kind of a different feeling. They kind of treat you as like, if you're part of the G Fest, it's like kind of a family-ish thing. There's like parties after. There's It's really wild an experience.
Yeah, that's what I've seen, and I'm partially like I thought about this coming up summer. It's like, well, what if I bring my son? And I'm also like, I'm not a huge party guy, but I really don't want to have to go at 8 o'clock and be done every night. So maybe down the road we'll try, maybe next year. But so speaking of favorite Godzilla film, I mean, I know that's I don't know. For me, that's a tough question, but for you, what would you say your favorite is?
Recently, I think Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster is my favorite.
Really? Okay.
I really love that movie because I feel like it gives a bit of everything that the fans want.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of get the great effects, the great monsters. I feel like it's just amazing how they did King Ghidorah at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So many wires and like a couple dozen people manipulating it in the background.
Oh my
It's
gosh, yeah.
it's really incredible how they made that look and how it comes off on screen. You also get the peanuts, you get the music, you
Mm-hmm.
get um, you get the great classic actors too, and I feel like it just fits in. Like it really sets the mood for a Godzilla film.
Yeah.
So I really love that movie, and yeah, it's a really great film.
It is, and we're by the time this comes out, we'll already have our episode about that film, and I'll say it's it's really surprising for me realizing how rushed they were with that because they weren't even
Yeah,
planning on releasing it in 1964 until I think it was Redbeard was supposed to come out that holiday season. And Toho, they weren't able to. So, like, well, we need to put something in the slot. So they rushed, Ghidorah up and into that. So I think there's a couple things for me. I'm like, I would have done it differently. But, like,
sure.
overall, it's a really fun film. Absolutely. It's just crazy to me that you get Mothra versus Godzilla and that film all within a year. They're both like two great films within
Yeah,
such a short period of time.
I I can't believe they scrapped it up together all that fast,
I
and
know.
it, it's truly amazing just seeing all that come together. And you can really tell like the wear and tear on the Godzilla suit and everything
Oh, yeah.
is a reuse, but still uh, such an enjoyable film.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was like they only had time to fix the head. That was about it. They fixed the jowls because the jowls were
Yeah,
loose in the last film. And that was about all they did. So you've already said that you like other tokusatsu films and stuff like that. You had mentioned, like Sentai, which you really need to talk to my co-host about that. He's been on a kick with that lately. Probably more than the Godzilla films. He's
yeah.
probably just going to start his own podcast. So I guess, what would you say in the genre? Like, what are some of your other favorite films? Like, where have you kind of branched out?
What really got me to branch out was when Godzilla took a break after its
Hmm.
50th anniversary. After Final Wars, it was like there's not that much action going on. So I expanded to Ultraman, and
Hmm.
I think my favorite Ultraman series is Ultraman Nexus. I believe that's the one who started me kind of off on this other
Okay.
trip to other tokusatsu. It was like a mix of, it's a little bit darker of an Ultraman series,
Hmm.
but it does contain like the great hero elements and suits and monsters that we know and love. And yeah, it's a really great show. And also at the same time, I did love Power Rangers growing up,
Hmm.
and seeing that Power Rangers was based off of the Japanese original, and basically they took the footage and spiced it up.
Yep.
I had to see the original stuff, so I caught up on a bunch of these things. And in the time, Kamen Rider was also a big thing. It was kind of like it all kind of just comes together.
Hmm.
And I think with those, I really love I really love Garo also. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or seen it.
I have not.
It's kind of a superhero show, um, like a horror based,
Hmm.
and it's about basically a knight that really like protects the people from monsters. But it's really a cutting edge CG show from that time period. But
Okay.
it's it's a really good one.
Yeah, I'll have to get some more info from you after this.
Yeah. So those are some of my favorites, and I really love Gamera 3 also. I think that's secretly my, not so secret now, but favorite kaiju film of all
Busted.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good though. I'm sitting here like we're going through these movies, and in the back of my head, I just want to fast forward to the trilogy and show Chris. I'm like, this is where we're going.
Yep. It's something about that film. I can watch it
Yeah.
over and over and over. It's so great.
Yeah. See, I'll say so. I had my son. We watched. I would say the trilogy, but we only watched the first one and the third one. The second one was actually more intense than I thought it was going to be.
Mm,
But the third one actually we were able to get through it. But yeah, he loves those films too, and they're shot beautifully, they're scored beautifully, the acting's top notch. So yeah, it's Gamera 3 is definitely top tier. So I don't blame you.
yeah. It's amazing.
So past year then, I feel like we've had a good selection of films that aren't tokusatsu. So like, and I'm not even necessarily saying contemporary like our domestic films, but, like, what would you say your favorite film in the past year or so has been, and why?
Sure. My favorite film in the last year is Avengers Endgame. To
Okay.
not to people's surprise, but I've loved the Marvel series
Hmm.
since Iron Man came out, and I've really loved the journey that they've given these characters and the way that their stories kind of just evolved
Hmm.
over time. And I really feel that that's special to grow up with that
Yeah.
and to see the stories kind of conclude for these some of these characters. And I just really love yeah, the thought that was put into it. You kind of feel the progression of the characters' relationships throughout the films, and I feel like they really put their heart in it, and
Hmm.
you can really feel that it's a product of love at the end. Like it's just yeah, it's just a really great film.
Yeah. Yeah, I had fun watching it. I mean, I'm not as invested in the MCU as probably some people are, but it was one of those things where like I think it's easy to hate on it, right? And I don't think people are willing to admit that it's just because they're doing well. And I know that's not really the case for everybody, but
Sure.
for me, I'm like, is this something I would expect to be in the Criterion collection? Yeah, absolutely not. But like, was it a fun film? Did it do what it set out to do? I would say yes, it did. Yeah, and
Absolutely.
it was a fun time for sure. And I mean, I'm personally burned out. Like, I don't know if I'll go see any of the other in theaters anytime soon. Maybe, well, actually, I take that back. The casting for the Eternals looks absolutely incredible. So that'll probably be an exception for me.
So
But
no Black Widow.
no, I mean, I don't know. Like, who knows? Like, when's that coming out again?
I believe it's in May.
Yeah, I'm thinking so that'll be, let's see, March, April, May. I'll have a 3 month old by that point. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. That might just be a moment of
There you go.
respite. But um okay, so here's really I would say my two favorite questions that I've asked so far. So first of all, you've shared some of this, but like what does the fandom mean to you?
Sure. At these events that we've been having for our guests and fans, we do a fan party
Hmm.
so it's a more intimate time where like our our guests, like the suit actors, can have dinner with some of the fans. And every time we go there, it's such an intimate time that people are always so welcoming. They're always wanting to know what's your favorite films. Let's get people involved. Let's talk. And I think the fandom is just truly a a family, and in that way, I think we we can continue to grow um, and fans in a positive space for people who want want community and to know these films and to appreciate them together. I go to tons of events, and at every place there's always a familiar face, or there's a um, people who reach out to new fans and bring them in for like dinner after or these parties. There's um, there's a guy called Robert Moreno, and
Okay.
he runs the Kaiju Brotherhood. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
I have not.
Uh, Basically, at almost every event, they kind of like build up a big party of people, just fans, young and old, and um, they just make a party out of it, and they really have a welcoming attitude into um, getting fans to connect with each other and to know each other. And I think yeah, this fandom has a lot of space for that and for appreciating different views, our love for different types of movies.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's been truly a blessing seeing some of these fans outreach and grow, and including your podcast. I think it's just a wonderful thing that we can bridge the community together and people can know one another, how people are working in the background, and the things uh, that divide people aren't as important as
Mm-mm.
as being encouraging towards one another and learning from one another.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing is realizing that, we're inevitably going to have differences,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, there was a conversation going on Twitter, I don't know, a month or two ago talking about like dating, and someone says something along the lines of like, "Well, I could never imagine dating someone who didn't share the same interests as me." I was like, "I did it, and I'm happily married almost 6 years later." And I mean, to be fair, like I get that you want to share your important
Mm-hmm.
parts of your life with someone else, but the thing is, in any relationship you learn to appreciate what the other person appreciates, right? I
Yes.
didn't learn, I like when I met my wife, I didn't like Pride and Prejudice.
Mm,
Now I think the BBC version is absolutely incredible, and I have no shame in admitting that, right?
that's
Like even
awesome.
the movie is too, but that's the thing is I had to learn how to like what she liked, and in the same way that a few months ago I sat down and put High and Low by Akira Kurosawa on, and my wife looks over and all of a sudden she's ready for bed, but she's like, "Can we finish this tomorrow?" And I'm like, "Yes." Right? So like that's part of it. It's
Absolutely.
definitely, I just think within the fandom, we need to remember that, like, yes, we have these differences, but like how much more we truly have in common. And it's just tough though, I think sometimes to remember that. And that's the tough part, right? Is just like, how do I focus on what is really holding us together? And if we do that, I think we would not pick as many stupid fights that we do all the time.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is people often treat others the way they think they would be treated if they
Hmm.
had that same opinion or that same interest or same issue that they have a problem with. And I think that truly, um, that's not really where we want to go. I think we should really be trying to see why people like what they like and also learn from them.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. So I would say at this point, because obviously you've been involved in the fandom for a while in a couple different capacities. So, what would be your word of encouragement? I'm going to change this up a little bit. So,
Sure.
lately I've talked to a few people that have just been super worn down. A lot of it's just like, it's less about having disagreements about films and it's more about like they feel like it's just incessant, right? It's just, especially like the King of the Monsters hate, it's just, some of it's legitimate criticism, and then the other I feel like it's just like low hanging fruit. People just keep coming back to it, so people are just exhausted. They're just like, I just want to enjoy these films. I don't want to feel like I'm stupid or dumb or wrong for liking what I like. So people just, they're worn out, they don't want to deal with this anymore. So, for the people who really do have an investment in what these films are, but maybe they're just exhausted, like what would be your word of encouragement to like to get them through that without just throwing the baby out with throwing Minya out with the bathwater? Like, what would you suggest?
I, for one, really enjoy King of the Monsters 2019. Um, and I do see all the hate around it. And I think the thing to remember is that films and art and all of that, all of it speaks to us differently and uniquely. And I think we need to remember to let people have their opinions and views on it.
Hmm.
And then an encouragement is that, there's going to be a time where you like something and somebody won't, but you could be um, that example of someone who would encourage somebody through that time and not give them a hard time about it. I think directly we're responsible for um, the vibe of the community,
Hmm.
and we are in 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 some form a testimony of what we want to be. So I think with with that, I would leave people with be positive, be loving, and really show that um, we're willing to learn from one another and to really give people a chance to share their opinions.
Hmm.
And even if you don't agree, I don't think you need to comment on every single thing. That really drives the toxicity of like, oh yeah, there's like 200 replies of somebody hating, King of the Monsters. And the other thing is you don't have to read them all either.
Yeah.
I think that really builds it up. If you're really exhausted about it, I don't think you should be reading all of it either. I think you should kind of get back to the fundamentals and remember why you like what you like and enjoy it.
Yeah, and that I think you do kind of have to put limits on things sometimes too,
Yeah.
right? I mean, so like on Twitter, I had to learn how to like how do I change it from being just like the regular home where it shows top tweets and I go to latest, right? I don't want to necessarily see what everyone else is liking because I may follow people I don't 100% agree with, which is fine.
Yeah.
But there's certain things where I'm like, nope, I don't want to see that, and it's easier for me to just I have to put limits and parameters. And sometimes I'm just like, nope, this is a stupid conversation. And I mute it and I just scroll on. Right. And I'm like, I love you guys, but this is dumb. And I'm not dealing with this. Um, I'm not about to start fighting with someone that is twice my age.
It's important to know your limits and to
Yeah.
know what is going to upset you or vice versa. I mean,
Yeah.
we are directly responsible for that. So I think people
Absolutely.
should know be able to know engage themselves and to know um, when is the proper time to respond and when is the proper time to not look.
Hmm.
Yeah,
When is the time for me to just log off?
yeah,
Yeah. I wanted to actually share something really quick
sure.
before we close here because we were just talking about the community here, and there's a there's a scholar that I really like, and when I submitted a panel request, it's actually based off of the work that she's done. She's a sociologist named Christina Cleveland, and it's somewhat relevant, and that's why I wanted to share. So I kind of wanted to hear your thoughts here.
Okay,
So this is more of in a church context, but she writes in a sociological element, so dealing with communities. So the biases we hold against other groups have the ability to wreak havoc on our cross-cultural interactions. So before we enter into such interactions, we must do the difficult work of addressing our biases and blind spots. So do you think that's something that would help us in our community? Not necessarily cross-cultural, but I feel like even within our fandom, it's very pluralistic, right? We have a lot of different genders and orientations and ethnicities and social statuses and stuff like that. So, do you think that would help if we actually reevaluated ourselves before we did all of the interaction?
I believe that is totally true. I think if you're going to have a bias, you should evaluate is this is this truly something that I need to make somebody feel bad over, or is this something I need to uh, call people out on? Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
the biases are just personal preferences, and it comes just down to that. I think some of it um, can always be presented in a respectful way. You're gonna have your biases. You're gonna have your likes and things you agree and don't agree with. But in the end, I believe um, there is, above all, there is a way to treat people, and it should be out of encouragement and love and out of respect.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that when you think about, yes, people who, uh, yeah, who act on their biases to bring people down or to try to shape everyone into just one set opinion, it's really a direct reflection of themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and it's truly a eye opener to know and to think about, why am I being so forceful of my biases upon others? And I think that's something we all need to look into ourselves when we're trying to argue a point. And I think that will like really reveal like where your heart is in all of this. So
Yeah. Nope. You're absolutely right. I think there's a lot of pushback I've seen in some of the stuff I've written where people are like, but my free speech. And I'm like, I'm not saying
yeah,
police your
absolutely.
speech. I'm just saying don't be a dick. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't, I'm just like, I don't know how you're getting to that conclusion. So like, but I get it. There's a certain point where not everything's going to be, just loosey goosey, never having any feedback, not pushback or anything like that. But I think ultimately, if we took the time to be like, is what I'm saying beneficial? Is what I'm saying not just self-serving? I feel like a lot of our conversations would be a lot different. So,
Yeah, totally. It should be a reflection. I mean, looking into our own character and thinking about, is this really right to do? And, if I do this, how would other people feel?
mm-hmm.
And I think it's really on our community to really look into the way we treat others and the way we impose our own um, views of the movies, whether it's too forceful or not. But yeah, I really think, yeah, people should really evaluate their own character.
Absolutely agree with you. So, well, Jonathan, it is almost midnight for me, and I am just absolutely bushed. But if people want to follow you on a social media platform, where would you send them?
I could be found at Mr. Krupp on Instagram. That's the place I use the most to promote some of the guest appearances that we have, and yeah, I would look out for those. I think it would be really nice for you guys to meet artists like Shinji Nishikawa or some of the Sentai guests or other guests that come in from Japan, and I think it will be just a great opportunity to meet them and to get to know one another. And yeah, I'm really excited.
And I will clarify, and I'll put it in the notes as well, but that's MRKRUPP. But yeah, I'm excited to hopefully meet you this summer. All fingers crossed there. But I
Yeah.
really do appreciate you taking this time, and I hope everyone has a good rest of their day. Thank you again for listening to this episode of the Kaiju Apostle Podcast. If you liked what you heard, don't be a stranger. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook at Kaiju Apostle Pod. To make sure you don't miss any future episodes, you can subscribe to our show on your favorite podcasting platform, including Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google. Lastly, we do have a Patreon page where we have some great perks, including early access to the episodes, show notes, and the ability to have your voice recordings featured on the show. Again, we appreciate the support, and we look forward to hearing from you.